For activity 3, I made a Google form that I would use in my chemistry class as a way for students to submit data from a lab as well as their calculated results from the lab. So some of the add-ons that I found to help me make this more efficient, so we look at the responses from the Google form. So these values here were the values that students entered. So I had to add a few columns in here where it says correct, any of the columns that say correct. So K, M, and O, I added. And in this column, I entered a formula. So if you look up at the formula bar, so this formula pulls the measurements that students made from these 5 columns, and it calculates the value they should have gotten. Part of this lab is asking students to perform the calculations correctly. So I wanted a column where I could see what they should have gotten if they had done this correctly. And then I can compare this number to the number that they entered. So they entered 0.167. They should have gotten 0.17. Without getting too sciencey, this is the same value. So they would get the points for that. Same thing with the next 2 columns. You can see that these are the same value. They would get the points. Same thing there. Now, one of the add-ons that I found is something called Copy Down. And Copy Down is really simple. Once it opens, all you have to do is turn it on, and it looks at your responses, and it's going to pull from formula row 2, and it found those 3 formulas that I had entered in these different cells, and it is going to copy down those formulas each time another student would submit this. So when I open the spreadsheet, everything will already be filled in for me. So when I do this, there will be a cell that appears at the end, and this is just what formula copy down needs. So you wouldn't sort this row because this is where it's pulling from. So that's the first add-on that I thought would be really handy to use, because then I don't have to worry about entering formulas the whole way down as students submit. Another add-on that I looked into but didn't end up using, which I think a lot of teachers use, is Flubaroo. And the reason that I didn't think Flubaroo was going to work so well is because of the way students may be reporting their values, and then the way I may have expected students to report their values. So 0.167 and 0.17 are scientifically the same number, just depending on how students made their measurements. Flubaroo is not going to be able to distinguish this, so Flubaroo would mark this wrong. So in this case, I didn't think Flubaroo would be a good add-on to use, and I think it's going to be easy enough for me to just check these 3 columns, see if the number is right. So it's not quite as automatic as Flubaroo, but it's better than what I was doing in the past when I was doing it by hand. Another add-on I found is if I go back to the actual form, so we do a lot of labs in chemistry. I would like to do this for other labs. So the add-on is called Form Recycler. So I'm going to click on Recycle Form Questions. Now you would use this when you were making a new form for a new lab, for example. So if I wanted to recycle questions from this lab I had just done, I would select that, and it's going to pull up all of the questions that I had put into this form. This is, again, just going to save me some time, especially if I'm asking these same questions over again. First, last name, class period. If I have instructions that stay the same from form to form, I can just go through and click those. And then I would insert questions into my new form. I'm not going to do it because it's just going to insert the same questions into what I already have pulled from. But I think this would also make things a little bit more efficient for me as I was making this form for other labs. So those are just a few of the add-ons that I found would be very helpful using a Google form, especially in a science class.